Hi folks, I'm Matt and welcome to my top 80 vintage board games of all time. Well, let's just get started here with number 60. Number 60 is the classic game Labyrinth. Labyrinth, where you're using these tiles and pushing them across the board either horizontally or vertically and trying to establish a path for your pawn to go to get to certain items on the board. And the more items you collect, the first person to collect all the items they need wins the game. There are different versions of this game. I have an older version that was given to me. I'd never played the game until this year, and I played it with my little 5-year-old nephew, and this dude figured it out so fast that he actually beat me. He ended up winning, and I was really trying. So it's a neat little game that anyone can play. You're basically choosing a tile and pushing it across the board and trying to establish paths or block other players' paths. It is a really neat game with a lot of thinking involved, more than you would imagine for such a children's game. I really did love it, and that's why it's number 60 on this list. Number 59 is called Midnight Party or Ghost Party. It's the same game. And this one, you are at a party and you're going around the board, and when Hugo the Ghost appears from the stairwell, that's when things start to get crazy. You're trying to play something like musical chairs as you're trying to make it into each room without Hugo catching you. Now when he does, you're going to get negative points. After 3 rounds, the person with the least negative points wins. A very simple game, but actually really fun. There's actually a huge fan club for this game. A lot of people love the game so much. I said in my review just recently, they actually came out with an expansion to the game 25 years later. So people really do love this game. I just discovered it this past year. It is a really fun game to play. The more players you have, the better it is. And that's why it's number 59 on the list. Number 58 is a game called Crocodile Hunter. And Crocodile Hunter, you are Steve Irvin trying to make it around a fence post, this entire fence where there is an alligator kept. But if you draw a Croc Attack card, you're going to have to press the little battery operated crocodile as he spins around the board, hitting various points on the fence. If he hits you, where your man is clipped to the fence, it will release a pin that will spring your character up into the air and will have you screaming too, because who wants to get attacked by an alligator? No way, that's scary. I gotta thank Spencer, one of my friends, for showing me this game. He came on my podcast, and when he was talking about his top 10 games, he put this on his list. I said, what is that? And basically, this is just a re-theme of another game called Fraidy Cats. In Fraidy Cats, you're just cats moving around a fence trying to escape from a dog. Now, that game was way too expensive when I went to look for it, but Crocodile Hunter, same game, just different theme slapped on it, is a much better game, because I think I'd be more scared of a crocodile coming after me than I would a dog. Okay, dogs all bark, hardly any bite. And this one, I do like the theme. Like I said, Crocodile Hunter, I watched him on and off like everyone else did, but I'm super happy to get this because it's super cheap to get this version. So if you were looking at something like Fraidy Cats, get the Crocodile Hunter game. It's really a lot of fun. I actually got mine for free because the guy who shipped it to me was missing a piece and one of the spring-loaded mechanisms wouldn't work. I ended up fixing it, so I have a great game, and it is a whole lot of fun. I'm so happy my buddy showed me this one, and that's why it's my number 58. Number 57 was number 92 on my list last year. That means it's climbed up, I believe, 35 spots now that I've split the list. And it is very rare that this would be up that high because it's a 2-player game. This one's called Dead Stop. And Dead Stop, you have all these pawns, and at the bottom of the pawn, you're going to put a little circlet, a colored circlet underneath there that only you can see. And each one will have a different color. And the whole time you're playing cards and moving your pawn up this track, while at the same time trying to guess your opponent's pawns and what color they are at the bottom, what those rings are. If you guess the right color, that opponent comes to a dead stop. And you want that to happen because the further up the track they get, the more bonus points they're going to get at the end of the game. So if you can guess them early on and have them come to a dead stop, they won't get any more points than what they have. Sometimes negative points if you can guess it at the very beginning. Now, this game is fun for a ton of reasons. One, super smart game. You have these little rings. I think you have 6 pawns and only 5 rings of the same color. So you can't guess all of them. You only guess them 1 pawn at a time, but you just can't go through the route because I know one of them are red. I'll just use every ring and keep guessing red until I finally get one right. No, you could run out of red rings, and the one that you didn't guess is the one that, you know, gets to go all the way to the top of the chart, and you're going to lose a lot of points if that happens. It's a very, you know, it's a kind of a guessing game. Plus, I love it because the ring will stay on there if you guessed wrong. So if I already guessed red for one pawn and I had to guess again, maybe he's yellow. I haven't guessed that one yet, and I'll get my yellow ring out, or my green, or my blue, purple, orange, whatever other colors they have. It's amazing. I really do enjoy this game. Now, it is true, I don't play many two-player games that much. This one I love, and this would be way higher on my list if other people loved it too. I think I'm the only person who loves this game. I brought it out to my gaming group once while we were waiting for everyone to arrive. Someone arrived early. I said, let me show you this game. He didn't seem that impressed with the game. My wife does not like the game. My nephews do not like the game. I absolutely adore this game, but unfortunately with no one else to play, it's going to stay at 57 on the list. At 56 is a game that is quintessential 80s. It came out in the 80s, and it just oozes 80s. And that's the game Go For It. And Go For It, you are all moving a pawn around this board. It looks like a Monopoly style board. It has 52 spaces, one space for each week of the year. You're also going to get these birthday tokens that you're going to place around the board, like cake, pizza, party hat, and present. And there's other stuff too. And when the pawn, if the pawn lands on that week of your birthday, you're going to get a special benefit because it's your birthday. To my knowledge, this is the only game that takes into account the player's birthdays and actually gives you bonus points for landing on your birth week. Crazy stuff. Now, this is a game for yuppies. I mean, this is the ultimate 80s yuppie game. You're trying to collect everything, get all the stuff, get all the promotions, be the big wig at work and everything, and, you know, try to be the best, and then go for it. I mean, go for the 80s dream. It does not shy or back away from being what it is, just a game about the 80s. It's not a remember the 80s. It's not a make fun of the 80s. It's like, this is what's cool and hip right now. When that game came out in, what, 1986 or something? Perfect. Perfect game. I love it. I found this on a guy's video. He did a top 10 odd board games. You know, the board games that he really loves. His true top 10, he said that a lot of them you're not even going to know. And I was like, whatever. And I think this was like number 9 on the list. He said, was Go For It. He loved it. He still loves it today. I was like, Go For It? What is that? I'd seen the cover. It didn't look like much. And then I actually got a copy because you can find them pretty cheap here or there in antique stores and, you know, flea markets. And so I found one, paid, I can't remember, like 10, 15 bucks, and brought it home. Oh, where has this game been on my life? I love it. Now, I do have a group that plays vintage games that we get together every blue moon, and I really need to get them together to play this game because I know they're going to love it because a lot of them are from the 80s or they appreciate 80s culture like I do. And I think that's going to be a big, big hit when it finally hits the table. So far, I've just played it with my nephews a few times. They like it, but for different reasons because all the neat stuff you're getting. And I love it because it is so retro, man. It looks just incredible. It would have been the coolest game ever back in the 80s. But anyway, it is a great game, and it is on my list here at number, I can't find it, 56. My number 55 was 55 last year. So it didn't even move, which is kind of weird because now it's got its own list. And it didn't move up, but it didn't move down. It's the only game that didn't move up. And that is Tank Battle. And Tank Battle is very similar to a Battleship where you're trying to guess where your opponent's going to move their tanks. And you have your own private little pegboard, and you're going to put down guesses where they're at. If they do move a tank on one of those squares, then you get to blow up their tanks. And of course, the first person to blow up the other opponent's tanks wins the game. I have the 70s version of this game. There is a newer version that was made in, I think, the mid-90s. I think it's called Tank Command or something. The pieces look a lot better, and it's a lot cheaper to get a copy. And so I'd probably go for that one if you're interested in getting this game. Should you get the game? Well, you got to watch my review for that, but obviously I love the game. Norm from the Board Game Museum and I, we did a playthrough on this. We did a battle, and we recorded it, and it's on his channel still. And it's where you know, basically he cheated to beat me. I'm sure the videotape doesn't show that, but I know he did. I'm just kidding, Norm. Anyway, no, he guessed right. My last 2 or 3 tanks just blew me up out of the water. I thought I was going to beat him, but wow. I mean, hey, it's a guessing game. It's a little bit strategic too, because there's a secret mine on your side of the board, and you write down on a piece of paper and fold it in half. It's really old school there, you know. And if they happen to land on that particular one, then you reveal the paper that, you know, hey, that's where my landmine was. You just blew up. So that's a neat way to blow up a tank. And there's certain bases like headquarters and oil depot, gas depots and stuff like that, that if you do get to and you can eliminate, you're going to hurt your opponent in the game. So there's a lot of strategy in this game. I really do enjoy this game. I don't know why it didn't move up. I made this list independently without looking at my old list, and when I saw it was the same number, I was like, wow, that's weird. But anyway, Tank Battle definitely deserves to be on this list here at my number 55. My number 54 was number 80 last year on the list. I guess that means it's gone up 26. I hope my math's right here. I think it's gone up 26 spots here, and it is called Forbidden Bridge by Milton Bradley. And Forbidden Bridge, you're trying to make it across this bridge twice, each time gathering a jewel and bringing it back into your boat. But you have to watch out, because if a certain icon is rolled on the die, then they may hit the bridge mechanism in the game that will shake the bridge, and you or the jewel or both will fall off. Now, the first person to gather 2 gems, put them in their boat, and swim away is the winner. It's a very simple game. Again, this is one of those classic adventure games from Milton Bradley. I had seen so much about it. It is way overpriced online. I would not get this game, not for the prices they're asking. I actually had to break down and use some eBay gift cards I'd gotten for Christmas to purchase the game at a decent price. It wasn't, I can't remember, the game was going for like $75, $80. I didn't pay that. I used my gift card. I had a $50 gift card, I think got it for $30, but even that was like, ooh. I don't know, I even know if the game's worth that much, just because there's not that much gameplay. You're just moving across a bridge, basically, and then back down to your boat and then back up to the bridge. But it is a fun game. I do love the game. When your character is barely hanging on, because they have the character has a little crook in his arm, and when he flips over the bridge, sometimes the little pawn is able to hook on to the railing of the bridge and hang on, just like for dear life. So sometimes you're barely hanging on to the bridge, and it feels kind of real, like, no, don't drop, hang in there. And I said this in the review, but me and my nephews love playing the game because we call it the Hubba Hubba Bridge, because the idol's mouth moves when the bridge starts shaking, and it sounds like he's saying hubba 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 hubba, and so that's what we would always say when we'd hit it. It sounds silly and ridiculous now that I think about it, but it is super fun for that reason. So my number 54 is Forbidden Bridge. Number 53 was number 83 last year. That means on this list, it has now moved up 30 spaces, and it is called Polar Dare. In Polar Dare, you are a group of penguins moving across icebergs, trying to get to the other side of the land. But the one thing you have to watch out for is the polar bear. And if the polar bear lands on your iceberg, your penguins go back to start. Now, this is a great game. It reminds me a lot of another game that I'm not going to mention yet. But there is strategy involved. You can ride icebergs with other people's penguins. That way it ensures they won't put the polar bear on you, because that would send their penguin back to the beginning again. Or you can try to get all of yours on icebergs and push them through as fast as you can. If you roll the polar bear die, that's when you can move the polar bear. By the way, these pawns are sweet. That is the awesomest polar bear icon I've ever seen. The mold is really made of some thick material, whatnot. It looks great. The game's really quick, very simple, and easy to play, and a whole lot of fun. I really do enjoy this game. That is why it is my number 53 on the list. Number 52 was number 70 last year. So on a list of its own, it looks like it has climbed up, 18 spots, I believe. So not bad for this one. This is called Smurfs Ahoy. Smurfs Ahoy is basically Topple with Smurfs. You have the ship, the box kind of converts to hold the ship, and then you spin a spinner, and whatever color pops up, you're going to put your little weighted Smurf on that color side of the ship without trying to tip the ship completely over. If that person does tip the ship over, they are out of the game. You can play with multiple players, have an elimination round like that, or just for 2 people. I've actually brought this game up to my big board game group. We use this as one of our filler games to play. It sounds ridiculous when you hear me talk about a bunch of grown men giggling with delight trying to get all the Smurfs on the boat without it tipping over. That does happen. There's only been once where we were able to get every Smurf up there without tipping it over, but that is hard to do. I love how this game utilizes the box. The ship looks really good. It's really plastic and everything. The Smurfs, even their little cardboard cutouts, they do have like a little weighted bottom, so to give them, you know, make it a little bit more harder. And spinning the spinner, and you know, hopefully you won't get another yellow and have to put a fourth yellow on that side because you know it's about to tip. Again, it's just toppled with Smurfs, but for some reason we love it so much, and that's why it's number 52 on this list. Then we get to 51, and I thought, should I put this as a vintage board game? It's a card game, but even that, it's not very conventional, meaning it never really got that big of a release, meaning I tore this out of a West End Games RPG game and decided to make my own deck of cards with it, which is what you're supposed to do. But the game is called Sabbat. It is a Star Wars game. The RPG book was called Crisis on Cloud City, and what they did is they gave you this sheet of Sabbat cards. Now, in the game of Sabbat, you're trying to get the number 23. It's kind of like blackjack, but Sabbat has positive and negative cards. So you could have a positive 30, but then a -7 card, which would make it 23, and therefore you can win. Or maybe you have all negative cards and they're -23. Or you can have something called an idiot's array, which is having the cards 0, 2, and 3, therefore having a 23 in your hand set. Fantastic. Now, for the randomizer, I have a die from some Star Wars game that I don't have anymore. I don't know where this die came from, but it has a lightsaber where the number 6 should be. And I roll, after everyone's turn, they roll the die, and if the lightsaber pops up, that's when you switch out your hand with brand new cards. Because in the game, the randomizer, the cards will change their faces randomly. Sometimes they'll change back to back to back. Sometimes it won't change at all for an entire game. And I think 1 out of 6 rolling it is a fair, amount to say, okay, that's when the cards would change. It's such a simple game. I'm super surprised Hasbro hasn't put something together and made a deck of Sabbat cards. Because, it's a super easy game to teach with simple rules, and it wouldn't cost much, and I think everyone would buy a pack of Sabbat cards. I know I would. An official release of them, not just something that you tore out of an RPG manual. But I did that, laminated the cards. I actually did play this with someone else a year ago, which made me think, hey, you know what? I didn't put this on my list last year, but I really like playing Sabbat. It's a very simple card game, and it's Star Wars themed in a way. But yeah, so super fun game. My number 51, Sabbat. Number 50 was number 57 on my list last year. Now that's on the vintage list, it moves up 7 spots on its own, and it is Shark Attack. And Shark Attack, you are a little colored fish, and you're rolling these colored die, and when your color pops up, you're going to move across the track before the mechanical shark, the battery operated shark, is chomping on the board, and he eats you. The last person left alive wins. This game lasts maybe 2 minutes, and then you want to play again. You think, that shark is moving so slow, it will never get to me. Well, as people are rolling those dice, they're taking their sweet time, and all of a sudden, before you know it, that shark is chomping at you. And you're like, someone roll blue, please! And of course, it's all luck-based, and speed rolling and whatnot, but I love it. It's such a fun game. We've played it here and there, my little nephews and I, and we laugh. My wife has played it with me. She gets super nervous when the shark's coming at it. It's a children's game, but a really fun game. Therefore, it is number 50 on the list. Number 49 is a newer game to my collection. It's called War of the Networks. And this came out in the late 70s, and what you're trying to do is you're working on a network station, and you're trying to establish a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday viewing schedule. Now, as you go around the board, each round is a different night. Friday is the first round, and Sunday is the last round, with Saturday being the one, of course, in the middle. And as you're going around, you're collecting and buying certain shows or TV movies to show off to hopefully get the most viewers for that time slot. And if you do, you're going to get victory points. And they're going to just add up that way. There's also a neat little mechanism. It's kind of a little bit like Monopoly, but if you land on a square where someone had already bought that show or movie, you're going to have to pay them to show the rerun, which actually is kind of thematic too, right? I want to do a rerun of one of your popular shows that you have. You know, so here's the money I have to pay you because I landed on that square. I kind of like that. And all the movies are fakes of other movies. Like instead of The Godfather, it's called The Godmother. Instead of MASH, it's called Mush. TV shows like The Incredible Hulk that were big back then, it's called The Incredible Bulk. I like that. Not all of them I get though. But some of the shows I do understand. If you were a child of the 70s, man, this game is right up your alley, I bet, because you would get probably all the jokes and the stories that, I mean, the shows that they have there. And it's really neat trying to make that best schedule work. So my number 49, War of the Networks. At number 48 is Murder, She Wrote, the board game. In Murder, She Wrote, all the players are playing as Angela Lansbury, except for one. One is going to be the killer. And what you're doing is you're going around the board, visiting all the people's houses, and then flipping over a token. The tokens will say that the character is either dead or alive. If you're Angela Lansbury, one of the millions of Angela Lansburys that are in the game, you're going to replace that token with the same type. For instance, if it says alive, you're going to replace it with an alive token. If it's dead, then you're going to replace it with a dead token, and you're going to make notes of it. Now, whenever you go to visit a house, you also have to put your little colored ring in the circlet to show that you were the last person to visit that house. And as another person goes, your circle goes down to number 2. You were second to last to visit the house, and so on and so forth. Now, if you're the killer secretly, and you look at it and it says alive, you have a choice. You can replace it with an alive one, or you can kill them off. And as the killer, you're trying to kill off X amount of people and then make it off the board before anyone guesses it's you. As Angela Lansbury's, you are trying to make notes of who you think the killer is. Man, I just saw this guy 2 turns ago and he was alive. Now that I pass through his house, I look at his token and it says dead. It must be someone else. Who was last here? These 2 people? It's got to be one of these 2 people. And it's basically a whodunit type mystery board game that is very thematic, oddly enough, super thematic to the TV show that it represents. If you would have told me a year ago that this would be on my list or in my collection or even in my top 50, I'd have laughed at you in the face. But when I saw this game, I was like, unbelievable. We played it, super fun, super fun. And also, you're thinking, well, whoever's making it off the board, they're obviously the killer, right? No, because if you want to guess who done it, you got to go to the end of the board. And that's where you can do to make a guess. So you don't know if someone's trying to make a guess or they're trying to get away. Unbelievable. And then, I think they did this on purpose, but there are 3 spaces before where you guess and where the end of the board is. And if you pass that point, you know, where you didn't stop on the, you know, guess who the killer is, then everyone knows it's you, right? It's almost that last minute gasp, because if you go past that one and maybe you're almost off the board, now everyone knows it's you and they're trying to scramble to get there, but it's too late. Maybe you do a little, ha-ha, it was me the whole time, you know, rip off your mask and whatnot. We actually played a game, because if you accuse someone, what we do, I can't remember if the rules have this or this is a house rule. What we do is everyone has to close their eyes, and it's kind of like werewolf or whatnot. The person who's guessing will tap that person with their eyes closed. That person will open their eyes, reveal who they are. If they are the killer, then that person, that Angela Lansbury person, wins. If they're not the killer, then that person's out of the game, and they cannot say who they chose. Only the person who got chosen knows. So that's how we play that. And it is so much fun. Well, the first game we ever played, everyone was accusing everyone. And it got down to me and one other person. And they obviously knew I was the killer. And as the killer, you have to kill, I can't remember if it's 6 or 7 people. You have to kill a couple people in there. And I'd killed my last, suspect. And I was trying to make a run for it. He was trying to make a run for the Angela Lansbury mark to make the guess of who it was. And everyone by that point kind of knew who it was too. And they're all cheering us on. And man, I was one space away from getting away with it. But those pesky kids, I mean, Angela Lansbury, put a stop to me, made it there in time, called me out, and I got arrested and taken out. Now, being Angela Lansbury is really fun. Guessing the killer is super fun. Being the killer is fun as well, but there's a lot of strategy. Again, do I kill this person off? No, because there's someone right behind me, and I saw that they were here 3 turns ago. That's too dangerous. I'm going to leave them alive. The game can kind of drag on a little bit if you have a killer who's too timid to kill people off quick. You know, that person doesn't have to kill them off. They could leave them alive for a long time, and that probably would drag the game out. But from every time we've played, the killer usually gets to, you know, slicing and dicing pretty early in the game. But it is a super fun game. My number 48 on the list, Murder, She Wrote. My number 47 was number 86 last year. Now that's on this vintage list, it moved up 39 spots, and that is the game Conspiracy. In Conspiracy, you have a passbook and a bunch of pawns and a suitcase on the board. And everyone can control any spy, and what you're trying to do with these little spy pawns is you're trying to get them to grab the suitcase and bring it back to your headquarters. That is it. That is the game. Now, if you notice, there are no dice in the game. There are no player pawns. Everyone can control the pawns. There's no money in the game. There are no playing cards in the game. Just the pawns, the suitcase, and a passbook with an imaginary $10,000 in it. You write $10,000 and you subtract from that ledger. What are you using? Well, you're paying off some of the spies. And so when it comes to it says uncover, blow a spy's cover, you can do that, and you have to reveal how much money you actually paid them to blow the other person's cover. We say assassinate because it basically just removes that pawn from the board, and you want to be eliminating the other spies, but also not have yours, the one you invested the most money in. If someone invested more money, that spy is of course going to go for the highest bidder, and they'll betray you. And it's like a 4-way tug of war to get those pawns to your headquarters, because someone can challenge you and say, no, I tell that spy not to go there, not to take one step closer to your headquarters. You say, oh yeah, well I invested $4,000 in him, and they're like, well, you know what? I invested $5,000. And you know, but once that money is used, it is spent. So you need to find out which one to spend it on. There's not enough money to buy off every assassin or spy, and we call them assassins because we like to assassinate them. This is such a weird and such a strange game. When I reviewed it, I said there is no game like it. I have still not found any game like this. I love the uniqueness of this game. The problem is it's hard to get this game to the table because my nephews who did enjoy it don't really ask for it anymore, and they've kind of forgotten it by now. And then my adult board game group, I don't know if they would enjoy it as much as I would. But I don't know, maybe I need to try it out, right, again with them. But I do love the uniqueness of this game. Now, you need to be good at math because the last person that won, we added their total, and they spent $12,000, and that's how they won. They came up with 2,000 imaginary dollars to spend and take control of the last assassin. But it is really cool. It's a really unique game. If you ever find it for cheap, check it out. Definitely worth your time. And on my list, it is number 47, Conspiracy. Number 46 is a new card game I got this past year. It is called QBert. In QBert, you're basically playing cards, moving QBert around, trying to establish a full pyramid. Now, the first person to fulfill that pyramid ends the game, but doesn't necessarily win the game, because then you have to score the points. Each one of those cards can range from 10 to 50 points. If you made a pyramid of a bunch of cheap little cards, and I made a pyramid of 350s, I'm most definitely actually going to beat your pyramid number. So even though if you complete your pyramid, you may not win. And you're thinking, well, okay, why not just wait and just start playing 50 after 50 after 50 after 50 points? Well, if you play the top point card, you also open yourself up for attacks. This game is very similar to Millborn in a way. You can play a card to help yourself or stop the other player. Like you can stop their QBert movement, and then they have to find a card to start their QBert movement again. But if they play a 50 card, the little coily purple snake that's in the video game, people can play a snake card and put a coily on your pyramid. And they can move coily with that and try to attack QBert. And of course, if he hits QBert, then QBert has to start all over again at the top, and you have to get QBert back down to the pyramid to help finish and build it off. I can't believe it, but this card game feels like you're playing QBert. It is super cheap to get, I think, online, and it is surprisingly a lot of fun. To be honest, this is another one that my vintage board game group, which doesn't come over that much, but when we do play, I'm definitely bringing this one out to show them because I think it is just an incredible game. I loved QBert back in the day. I loved the video game, and I love this card game just as much. Probably, maybe even more. That's weird. Anyway, but QBert is number 46 on this list. Number 45 was number 74 that last year, so I think that means it went up 29 spots on this vintage game list now, and it is another classic game from Parker Brothers called Tornado Rex. Tornado Rex, you are hikers trying to make it up this 3D board mountain. And when you draw cards, you're moving up or splitting your movement different ways, whatever the card says to do. And then every once in a while, you may draw the dreaded Tornado Rex card. When that happens, you will trigger a top that is at the top of this board. And the top comes screaming down the path. And if he hits your pawn, you're not just off the board, you are off the table. Your piece goes spinning and flying everywhere. It is so much fun. Now, Tornado Rex looks like the Tasmanian Devil, and the spinning top, which, by the way, what are the games use spinning tops? This is awesome. That spinning top makes a little whistling noise too as it's going down, and so you're really scared to see it. And sometimes it'll move, this top will just, for no reason, just move right around your pawn. It may hit everyone else and you made it through. That is such a good feeling. There are safety spots you can fall back to, but you would most likely lose your progress on the mountain if you went back to a safety spot. So you may want to say, I'm going to stay over here to the side and hopefully he won't hit me. But when he hits you, dude, you go flying. Pieces go flying everywhere. It is a really fun game. My nephews really love this game. It is one of the games that their friends ask for all the time. They say, hey, are you going to bring over our Tornado Rex? You know, because everyone loves this game. I do too. That's why it's number 45 on my list. At number 44 is the game Knockout. And Knockout, you have this big wall of plastic blocks and this thing called the rammer hammer that's going to just punch them out. And you're rolling this die, and whatever color comes up, that's the colored block that you have to remove from the wall. Now, if you topple the wall down, you're going to lose the game. So you can play multiple players or just 2 players of this. They kind of retheme this game with the Humpty Dumpty game, where Humpty Dumpty's sitting on the wall and you're trying to take out the bricks, you know, with this little spade. That's really cool. I'm sure it's fun. I've never played it, but Knockout is the older version of that, and it is a lot of fun. It's a simple, easy game to play. My nephews absolutely adore the game. My wife absolutely loves the game as well. She thinks it's super fun. I do too. Easy to play, super easy to teach, and it's kind of got a little Jenga theme, but it's much more fun because you got something called the rammer hammer that's punching out those walls. So super fun game. My number 44, Knockout. Number 43 was number 56 last year. That means it's moved up 13 spots now that's on a list of its own, and that game is called Dynamite. And Dynamite, you're an adventurer trying to move across the board and get to the other 4 towers and back to your tower. To do that, you roll this die, establish bridges along the way, and then when the explosion die pops up, that's when you push down the little lever there, and one of the bridges randomly just blow right up. If you were on that bridge, you have to start back at the last tower you passed and start building that bridge all over again. Of course, the first one to make it around the board wins. This is such a great game. It is so much fun to push that plunger down and see some bridge blow up. It was so much fun that when I showed it to my little vintage board game group, I know a guy who went out and bought it that day. He went online and got himself a copy, and they play it all the time, he and his friends. And it is a really fun game. My nephews love it. Who doesn't like blowing stuff up? Super fun. So Dynamite, definitely worth your time, and my number 43. Number 42 is the game Rattler. And Rattler, you are a cowpoke trying to make it up a mountain and try to get to the top of it. But to do so, you're rolling a die. Every time you roll a die, you got to twist the little knob on top of the mountain. When you hear the rattlesnake's rattle, his tail will rattle, then you stop. You have a decision. Do you want to retreat back to the last high ground to try to be safe from the rattlesnake, or do you stay there and take the risk? Because there's 4 openings in the board. And if he shoots out, and it's a little plastic snake that just shoots out of that opening, if he shoots out on your side, you're going back to the beginning, or if you pass the halfway point, you're going back to the little camping site where you passed. There is something, an anti-venom token you can use to avoid that bite once. After that, you lose the token for the rest of the game. And of course, whoever makes it to the top wins. I've been looking for a Rattler game for a few years now. Finally got one last year. Brought it out. My nephews love it. My wife hates it, but also likes it too. But she hates that the snake comes out. It scares her. Even though the snake's, he has a smile on his face. It's a kitty looking snake. But it is a good game because when you hear that rattle, you get all goosebumps. Like, oh no, here comes the rattlesnake. And you're like all nervous. Which way is he going to come? Is he going to be for me? And I thought, because you have to fit him back in there. And as I was turning, I said, okay, well, I basically know where he is. But no, for some reason the turn knob is off. The tray moves faster than the turn knob, and so you really don't know which door he's coming out of, because I got it wrong. I was counting where he could be because I put him into mine. Every time I turned it, or when someone else turned it, I kept in my head where he would be. And so I didn't think he'd be underneath me. I said, no, I'm safe. And I hit the button. He came out at me again. I was like, what happened? How did I miscount? So that tray moves differently underneath the game than the knob does. And that's good because I guess they knew that people like me would cheat and try to count where it would be. So you'll never know where this snake's coming out, and I like that. Now this was done by Pressman Games. They did the X-Men games I mentioned in my last video. And it's a really cool idea. I really wish this is something they could remake because it's super hard to get. And I'm still missing 2 Venom tokens, which doesn't really matter. I mean, you can just make up anything to count for an anti-Venom token. But still, it is a super fun game. I love playing it. My number 42 on this list. And finally, my number 41 was 81 last year, so that means it's going up an incredible 40 spots on this vintage game list here, and that is called Dungeon Dice. In Dungeon Dice, you're rolling die into a pit, and you're trying to get as many matches as you can, so you can put cards on your side of the board to escape the dungeon. However, if you roll 3 guard icons as you're pushing your luck and rolling those die, you'll go back to the beginning, and all your progress will be wiped off the board, and you have to start all over again, laying those card tiles out to get out of the dungeon. Of course, the first one out of the dungeon wins. This came out in the 70s, and this is a dice rolling push your luck game that really could be played with adults as well. Because you're like, man, I got a few matches, but if I get one more match, I can place down 3 cards. That would really get me further in the game. Or I got to catch it with this person. I got to go for broke, get as many matches as I can get, or combos or pairs. It's super fun. Of course, if you roll guards, you can't re-roll a guard, and that's the risk of playing the game. But it is an incredibly fun game, and my number 41 on the list. All right, folks, that's it for now. Hey, join me next time as I go through my top 40 vintage games of all time. I will see you then.